Hello, Tungsten Miner here. I'm down here at the bottom of my orchard to talk a little bit about microblocks. Now, Forge Microblocks is one of the many things you get along with the rest of Forge, but I use it so often and so much that I figured I'd start by showing how that works. So to begin with, I'm going to take some simple cobblestone, convert that into stone tool rods, make myself a saw, and the saw gets used to actually chop up all the bits. Now you can make them from flint and they last a little while. You can make them from iron, they last a while longer. Or you can make them from diamond and they last the longest. But every time you cut a block, it reduces the durability of your saw by just a little bit. Okay, so let's take some blocks and start sawing them in half and see what we wind up with. I'm just going to take a simple chunk of birchwood here, and when I cut it in half I get slabs. Now these are like the half slabs you're used to seeing, except they can stand on their ends or they can lie flat. So I'm gonna put one flat there and one flat there, and now I've got two slabs that work basically just like any other slabs. But if I take this one here and pop it on its end, I can now build a wall that instead of being a whole meter thick is a half a meter thick. And I can build them up and down and put them wherever I want. And if I even stack them one against the other, it's basically indistinguishable from a full-size block. So whatever way you wind up using them, you can always get back to just making a full meter thick block. But if I take this thing, cut it in half again, I can get some panels, or if I cut it in half the other way, I can get some pillars. And this allows me to do some interesting stuff. Now you can see I get this little 5-cornered shape here with the center that allows me to position my microblocks anywhere along the side of this block. So I can have it standing up, I can have it lying flat. If I have it standing up, I can have it standing up on any one of the corners. Now, just because I've put one in that block doesn't prevent me from putting another one in that block. So I can wind up putting 3 things together and make this really interesting little corner sort of shape. Or if I break these down again, I can have one on the floor, I can have this post in the middle, and then I can take this one and put it on the top and make myself a little table. Maybe break that one off, make it look more like a table. So you'll see people do this with a fence and a pressure plate. Well, now you don't need to use those blocks in that way. You can use them however you want. And I can put these, it's getting a little dark here. Let me take a nap, get some light back here. Oh, it's going to take a little while. Anyway, so in the greener grass we can see I can position this in the corners, or I can position it in the middle. So I've got a couple of different choices for these pillar blocks. There we go. I'm going to finally take a nap here. But that's not true for these flatter pieces. They just lie flat or they stand up. Now if I bring these back and split them again, I can take one and split it this way to get a thinner piece. I can take this same one and split it vertically to get a thinner post. And if I take my post, I can split that vertically to get the same shape. So whichever way I wind up with that same shape again. And here I can split it to actually get little corners. So these corners can now only go in one of the 4 corners, but it gives me a block that's basically half the size of a regular block on each of its dimensions, so a quarter of the size altogether, which allows me to do all sorts of interesting shapes. Yeah, so do something like that. Then I can add this piece over here, and you can see how those are half as thick as the ones I had before. So I can fill up all sorts of different patterns in my single meter block and get all the different pieces in whatever combinations I want. Now, this gets to be really, really interesting when you're trying to use different materials. So you can make a block that's birch on one side and it's something else completely on the other side. Let's see, some of these, yeah, I can break this down into corners that are even smaller. I can take this guy and split it even finer. This will split it into these same corners here. So one of the ways I like to make railings, for example, is to take a lot of these guys and craft them all together. So I'm going to start by making a post here, and I'll say make every 2 meters another post. And then I'll begin by putting one on the top here. Now I'm going to hold down Shift so that instead of making this post thicker, I'm going to make it so that it extends from the side just by holding down Shift. And now I can make myself a little railing and then get rid of that extra bit on the top. So that's very handy. I use this trick a lot for making, handrails and railings all throughout my different structures. And sometimes I'll make the tops a little thicker, and sometimes I'll make the posts a little thicker. But with microblocks, you've got a ton of great choices about how you want to do things. So now let's imagine we're building, say, a little cabin. Okay, so now I've got a floor, and what I want is for the inside to be birchwood planks, and I want the outside to be these nice rose-colored bricks here. So I'm going to make some of those on both sides, and then I'm going to make my birch planks. Well, this is going to be a really tiny cabin on the inside, and then I'm going to make my red granite on the outside. Now, of course, this is kind of ridiculously small, but you can well imagine if you have a bigger shape. I've now got something where from one side it looks like I've got these red granite bricks. On the inside, if I were to go in there, why don't I take this guy here and grab my saw, grab my bricks. And every time you've got a little corner or odd shape, you can always chop whatever piece you're using in half and make a little bit smaller of a piece. So I'm going to fill in my corners here. And now if I were to continue building this up, I'd have a room that's birch on the inside and red granite bricks on the outside. I can do all sorts of other similar kinds of things. So let's say, for example, I want to make it, I've got a nice little, here we go. Maybe I want some cobblestone as like a window shade sort of thing. So I'll take these and split them up as much as I can get them. So covers are the smallest bits. And now I can place this on the inside surfaces. So now I've got a different texture for my entryway and my exitway through this little cabin that I'm building. So that gives me lots of choices, lots of things you can do. So microblocks are super, super handy. Another one that I'll frequently use is to make a kind of wall. This is how I did the wall around the main part of the house, where I'm making half a wall here, and then I'm going to take my birchwood here, slice it in half again, and then jumping up on top of the wall here. Oops, that's not where I wanted that. I'm going to place it flat so that it overlaps the edges of the walls a bit. But now I've got a flat surface on one side and this kind of overhang on the other side, which I don't like so much. So now I'm going to take these guys and chop them in half. And on the inside, I'm going to line up here so that it's got a little bit more of a ledge to it. I don't like that as much. I'll take that off. Maybe what I'll do instead is I'll come on this side and line up this here. So now if this were the inside of my protected area and this were the outside, spiders and things wouldn't be able to get over that ledge. And yet it's still a very small and kind of subtle ledge, so you can't really see it too much. It doesn't stand out a whole lot. Unfortunately, you do have some problems where I can't just lay the blocks flat on each other. So the reason why that looks so funny is you can see how the bricks allow things to be laid down. You can either put that piece on the bottom or on the top, but since there's something already on the bottom, it automatically pops it up to the top, right? So with this cobblestone piece, I can't put it where the birch planks already are. I have to put it on the top. So you can't do absolutely everything you might think of, but if you think through what you're trying to accomplish, you can generally find some pretty good ways to make things work out the way you want them to. Anyway, so that's a quick tour to Microblocks. Let's pause for a second and I'll head back up to the house and show off some of the interesting Microblocks things that I've done back up there. Okay, here we are back up at the house. And the first thing I wanted to show off is the fence itself. So from the outside, we've got a smooth, flat surface with some overhangs. So these are those kind of 1/4 size posts. And I've even gone so far as to add a corner at the end so that the bricks have a little bit of an overlap with the corners coming over them. So each one has a little overlap so the spiders can't crawl up. These actually are half width. They don't go all the way across. So we can see here the bricks are solid bricks, but these slabs are actually just half slabs. And that makes it so that when we go around on the inside, we can see that there's kind of a recessed area. One of the things that I love about the Microblocks is that you can get much more interesting shapes than just big flat slabs and big flat walls. You can have little indentations, you can have little things that stand out a bit. You can see how I've got the panels on the top there overlapping just a bit around the edges. So here I've got a panel in the center, a post on the side, and a corner. Post, corner, post. So I can create this sense of a capstone by just having those extra pieces go around the outside edge, and adds a three-dimensional sort of texture that you just can't get with normal blocks. So here at the castle, I've made these steps by using lots of pillars and notches, which is the big fat corners, and I've been able to get this to go all the way around the castle as kind of a footer for the castle. Here I've got the pillars going up the sides to make these thin sort of columns. Here I've got a window where I've got a post as a lintel, as a kind of window pane. And then here I've got a glass cover, so it's only 1/8 of a block thick, which makes it look a lot more like a natural sort of glass window. And then here I've got these, we can't see them from this side, but you can see the wood, we just can't see the name. But yeah, I've got wood on the insides of the windows to make them look like properly encased windows. Over here, my planters, I'm using the panels and I'm using the strips, which is kind of the half-size posts. And that creates this kind of rounded sort of corner. It looks like it's getting to be nighttime again. Why don't we take a nap? So this sleeping bag I'm using is from Open Blocks, and it allows you to sleep and pass the night without actually changing your spawn location. So my bed is way up there in my bedroom, and I can use the sleeping bag to pass the night without changing the fact that I'd respawn at my bed. Here's another example using the same technique I used on the walls. So a panel, a post, and then corners at the edges. Here, this path, I've got strips and, yeah, only strips. I don't think I needed the corner pieces. But that gives me all the way around. Oh, there's a nook. Yeah, that teeny little corner there. It's the smallest possible microblock. And that gives me just a little bit of a curb on this path and defines it a little bit more nicely. If we head inside the house, we can see the insides of these windows. So we've got the thinnest flat piece, the covers. Same thing for the windows. These are just regular bricks, nothing special going on there. The staircase is made out of pillars, and I've just got a stair-step pattern of pillars, one after another, that goes from one floor to the next. And on each floor, I just decide where I want the steps to start, and I decided I wanted a middle platform so I can turn around and head back up the other way. And all of these are just simple pillar blocks. And that gives me enough flexibility where I can make a really nice staircase that doesn't have any unnatural kind of corners or pieces to it, and yet goes all the way up, following exactly the same pattern the whole way through. Over here, using microblocks to create that railing, as I showed off before. And what else? I think that's about it for microblocks in the castle proper. If we go through to the back, we can see some of the other buildings and how I've used microblocks there. Okay, so in this case, I'm using panels, which are the 1/4 thick glass, to create this kind of sense of a waterway that's transparent and visible, with pillars to make a post, a little bit of a railing here, zooming up to the top. I'm using the same slabs and pillars to create a thinner sort of contained area for the watercourse. And same thing with the paths down here. And all these buildings, in fact, are using slabs as the main part of the building. And that gives me a couple of advantages. One, I just don't need as many materials because the walls are half as thick. And I always get 2 slabs for every block that I put in there. So if I'm having trouble finding enough materials, it makes it stretch out a lot further. And these posts are actually increased thicknesses. So I took a pillar and I added a post on top of it. So it makes it 3/4 of a block thick. And you can kind of see here, this is a whole block, this is a whole block, and that's halfway in between half a block and a whole block. So you can even have the partial in-between shapes. This lintel here is just a slab with 2 pillars laid down next to it, but that allows me to center it, have a little step here that's 2 blocks wide but centered on the 1 block that leads into the door. This whole room, you can see I've got panels for the floors. I've got nooks and strips to make the railing. And yeah, all the steps going down and everything else. So I use this technique a lot, pretty much everywhere. It's another slightly different kind of staircase. So instead of having a stair-step pattern, it's just had a diagonal. Makes it look a little more modern, cantilevered sort of edge. These things, so I'm using chisel to get the blocks and the patterns with the transparent sort of cross piece, and then I use my saw to cut them down to be 1/8 of a block thick. So you can see they're oriented on the wall there so that they take up just that corner, and here they take up just that corner. So there's really, these 3 blocks make up that piece. But it gives me this great overhead sort of rafter that's holding up the ceiling and making the whole thing really look much more realistic, as though you really needed the structural support. So of course in Minecraft we can build anything, it'll stand up and won't fall over. And then these windows are the same glass covers I've been using everywhere else for windows. But yeah, I've got this 1/2 meter thick wall, which you really just can't do in vanilla Minecraft. Even these trees are something that comes out of GardenCraft, but they use the same microblocks in order to grow the trees. So, taking a birch sapling and hitting it with a special kind of compost will produce these trees that are made out of microblocks themselves. Anyway, that's about it for microblocks. Let me know what you think. If there's something else you want to see, or if there's questions you have about how to use microblocks to build things, let me know in the comments. Talk to you later.